St. Peter's Square, wrapped in reverent silence, awaited the solemn moment. White smoke had already announced to the world, Habemus Papam. The red curtains of the central balcony fluttered slightly, heralding the first appearance of Leo XIV. Thousands of faithful, their eyes fixed on the loggia, eagerly awaited the new successor of Peter. When at last the curtains parted, an imposing figure emerged, dressed in the traditional insignia of the papacy. Every element of his attire carried centuries of history and symbolism, wordlessly proclaiming the continuity and renewal of the Catholic faith. It was a visual manifesto of tradition and faith. The eloquent silence of the crowd reflected the gravity of the moment. The white cassock worn by Leo XIV goes back to Pope Pius V, who, upon his election, kept the white habit of his Dominican order. Since then, white has become a symbol of purity and total consecration to God, representing the light of Christ that guides the Church. This choice reinforces the continuity of tradition and the holiness of the Petrine ministry. Over the cassock, Leo XIV wore the red mozzetta trimmed with ermine, a short cape covering the shoulders. Red symbolizes the blood of the martyrs, while ermine represents dignity and purity. This combination highlights the Pope's commitment to the truth of the gospel, even in the face of martyrdom. It is a visible reminder of the weight of the Petrine cross. A richly embroidered golden stole hung over his shoulders, a sign of the priestly munus. It represents the yoke of Christ, which the Pope assumes as universal shepherd. Gold indicates the kingship of Christ and the authority conferred on the Pope to teach, sanctify, and govern. Every detail speaks of the spiritual mission he embraces. On the ring finger of his right hand gleamed the fisherman's ring, symbol of apostolic succession. Traditionally worn by popes, this ring bears the image of St. Peter fishing, recalling that the Pope is the fisher of men, called to lead souls to Christ. After a pope's death, the ring is destroyed, symbolizing the end of his pontificate. Hanging over his chest, the pectoral cross reinforces the Pope's identity as Christ's representative on earth. It is a constant reminder that his authority comes from Jesus' sacrifice and that he must carry the cross daily in his ministry. The pectoral cross is a visible sign of his mission to proclaim the mystery of Christ's death and resurrection. On his feet, red shoes completed the ensemble. Historically, red symbolizes the blood of the martyrs and God's love for humanity. The red shoes remind the Pope that he must be ready to shed his blood, if necessary, for the good of the Church. They are a sign of humility and service, following Christ's footsteps to the end. Leo XIV's choice of these traditional vestments signals a return to solemnity and tradition. In recent times, some popes opted to simplify their dress, seeking a more accessible image. Leo XIV, on the contrary, reaffirms the importance of visible symbols in the life of the Church, communicating through them the continuity of faith and doctrine. This decision also aligns with Leo XIV's conservative and traditional profile. Like Leo V, Pius XIII, and Benedict XVI, he values the symbolic richness of papal vesture, understanding that these are not mere adornments, but visible expressions of profound spiritual truths. Every element of his attire is a silent catechesis, teaching through beauty and tradition. The white cassock, for instance, is not just a garment, but a testimony to the light of Christ that must shine through the Pope. It reminds the faithful that the Pope is called to be holy, pure, and wholly dedicated to God. It is an invitation to holiness for the entire Church. The red mozzetta with ermine, besides its beauty, communicates the Pope's readiness to face martyrdom if necessary for the truth of the gospel. The ermine, a symbol of purity, reinforces the need for moral and spiritual integrity in exercising the Petrine ministry. The golden stole, with its rich embroidery, speaks of the Pope's priestly authority. It reminds us that he is the servant of the servants of God, called to guide, teach, and sanctify the people of God. Gold symbolizes the kingship of Christ, whom the Pope represents on earth. The fisherman's ring, bearing the image of St. Peter, connects the Pope directly to the first of the apostles. It is a sign of apostolic succession and the ongoing mission of evangelization. By kissing the ring, the faithful acknowledge the Pope's spiritual authority and his mission to guide the Church. The pectoral cross, hanging over the Pope's heart, is a constant reminder that he must carry Christ's cross in his ministry. It symbolizes sacrificial love and the responsibility to lead the Church with humility and courage. The red shoes, though simple in appearance, carry profound meaning. They remind us that the Pope must be willing to follow Christ's footsteps to Calvary, if necessary. It is a sign of his readiness for sacrifice and service. Leo XIV's aesthetic choice delivers a clear message: the importance of tradition, solemnity, and beauty in the life of the Church. In a world that often despises the sacred, he reaffirms the need for visible signs that point to eternal spiritual realities. By adopting these traditional vestments, Leo XIV also places himself in continuity with his predecessors, who valued the symbolic richness of liturgy and papal attire. He recognizes that through these symbols, the Church teaches, inspires, and guides the faithful. Every detail of his attire is a silent catechesis, teaching profound truths about faith, the Pope's mission, and the nature of the Church. It is a form of evangelization that speaks to the heart, awakening reverence and love for the sacred. Leo XIV understands that in a world saturated with images and empty symbols, the Church must offer signs that point to the transcendent. His vesture is a testimony to the beauty of faith and the continuity of the apostolic tradition. The first appearance of Leo XIV on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica was therefore more than a ceremonial event. It was a visual proclamation of his vision for the papacy, leadership rooted in tradition, fidelity, and the beauty of the sacred. As the faithful beheld the new pope in his traditional attire, they were invited to rediscover the depth and richness of the Catholic faith. Every element of his dress served as a reminder of the universal call to holiness and fidelity. Through his aesthetic choice, Leo XIV reaffirms that symbols have power. They are not mere ornaments, but vehicles of meaning, capable of communicating eternal truths and inspiring the hearts of the faithful. In a time of uncertainty and change, the new Pope offers the Church and the world a testimony of continuity, tradition, and faith. His vesture speaks of a renewed commitment to Christ's mission and the beauty of the gospel. The choice of the white cassock is not limited to its color, but also to its austere cut and simplicity. It evokes the figure of Christ, suffering servant and glorious King, uniting humility and majesty. Every fold of the white garment recalls the veils of the Blessed Sacrament, pointing to the mystery of the real presence. Thus, the Pope's cassock becomes almost a liturgical vestment, a sign of his continual oblation. The fabric of the cassock, chosen with extreme care, is heavy, noble, devoid of artificial sheen. It alludes to the visible weight of the Petrine cross that the new pontiff bears. The absence of superfluous embellishments proclaims the sobriety and recollection the Pope desires for his mission. It is a garment that silences the world's noise and recalls holiness as the goal. The red mozzetta, in turn, revives a practice discreetly set aside by some predecessors. By donning it, Leo XIV makes a theological choice. to reaffirm the Pope's spiritual authority as defender of the faith. Ruby red is more than a royal color. It is the color of blood, the price of fidelity. And the immaculate ermine demands moral purity and doctrinal integrity. The texture of the ermine, visible even at a distance through the world's cameras, invites contemplation. It evokes Christ's kingship, but also the care for details that glorify God. This is not luxury, but visual liturgy, where every stitch and thread speaks of an eternal mystery. Beauty becomes evangelizing, drawing souls to the truth of the gospel. The golden stole, with arabesques shaped like crosses and wheat, tells a silent embroidered story. It proclaims Christ the priest, who acts through the Pope, his vicar on earth. Gold, far from ostentation, reveals the glory of the kingdom of heaven, toward which the Pope must lead the people. The stole embraces the pontiff's shoulders like the gentle yoke and light burden of Christ. This stole, used in solemn moments such as the first apostolic blessing Urbi et Orbi, is a sign of mediation. It connects heaven and earth, showing that the Pope speaks in the Lord's name and blesses with his authority. On the golden fringes, the symbol of the 12 apostles recalls the continuity of the Church's mission. It is not an ornament, but a sacramental conveying grace and duty. The fisherman's ring, displayed for the first time in that solemn moment, is a jewel laden with history. Forged especially for each new pope, it symbolizes the new mission entrusted to Leo XIV. The seal portraying St. Peter casting his nets is a constant call to evangelization. The very shape of the ring, heavy and solid, indicates the solidity of apostolic faith. As Leo XIV extended his hand to bless, he allowed the ring's gleam to proclaim his mission, to fish for souls. It is not merely a medieval symbol, but a vital function in today's world. The ring is not personal property. It belongs to the Church, and at the pontificate's end, it will be destroyed. This gesture recalls the transience of human offices before God's eternity. The pectoral cross, bearing the crucified Christ, rested silently upon the Pope's heart. There beat the pastoral love that must imitate Christ's unto sacrifice. It is also a spiritual shield against the world's attacks and the temptations of power. Seeing it, the faithful are reminded that the Pope is father, shepherd, and victim at once. Choosing a rich yet not exaggerated pectoral cross expresses a balance between dignity and humility. Made of gilded silver with red stones alluding to Christ's blood, it shows that the papacy's center is not the Pope, but the Redeemer. All authority derives from the cross and must rest upon it. The red shoes immediately drew attention, reviving a tradition that had been interrupted. A symbol of courage and readiness for martyrdom, they indicate that the Pope must walk upon the blood of the apostles. The red at his feet is not vanity, but memory of mission, to follow Christ's path to the end. They testify that the Pope walks not for himself, but for the flock. These shoes, handcrafted, were molded after ancient forms used by popes such as Pius XV. The matte red leather conveys the sobriety and sacrifice of the Petrine ministry. They are not for comfort, but for witness. In every step the pontiff takes, the martyrs walk with him. The visual impact of this combination of vestments is no secondary detail, but a message to the world. With the silence of shapes and colors, Leo XIV presents the program of his pontificate. A pontificate of continuity, reverence, and deep spirituality, a call to return to the essential, to truth and to holiness. The liturgy of sight unfolding on the basilica's balcony echoes like a mute sermon. Every detail speaks, say the faithful who understand the Church's language. The cross, the stole, the cassock, everything forms part of a theological discourse without words. It is the eloquence of silence heralding eternity. Leo XIV knows that symbols shape souls. Therefore, he chose the ancient ones, the holy ones, those tested by time. His calm face, firm posture, and vesture spoke in unison. Non nova, sed nova. Not new things, but the same things anew with fresh fervor. On the balcony, the Pope blessed the city and the world, and at the same time blessed the continuity of tradition, the rebirth of reverence. He did not inaugurate an era of ruptures, but of reaffirmations, and his vesture was his first homily. Many saw in that image a resumption of Benedict XVI's style, who also valued traditional symbols. But Leo XIV goes further. He assumes them not merely as aesthetic preference, but as theological identity. His traditionalism is not nostalgia, but fidelity, a fidelity expressed, yes, in the details of dress. Tradition is not something dead, but something living that is handed on. The Pope is the guardian of this life, clothing it in his very flesh. When he robes himself in cassock and cross, the entire Church robes itself with him. It is the mystical body of Christ presenting itself to the world. The teary-eyed gaze of many faithful in the square reflected this. They did not see just a new Pope, but a sign of hope, the hope that the Church remembers her eternal mission and walks securely, guided by symbols that do not fade. When Leo XIV spoke for the first time, his voice echoed among columns and domes, but long before he spoke, he had already preached with his vesture, preached the eternal gospel with brocades, crosses and red shoes, preached with the eloquent silence of tradition, the living Christ. Thus, his first appearance already became a legacy, a visual manifesto of faith, inviting the Church to contemplate the invisible through the visible. In an age of images, Leo XIV offered icons, and with them a promise, "I am with you always, to the end of time." That radiant afternoon, as Rome's sky took on a sacred golden hue, every gesture of Leo XIV seemed measured, contemplated, almost liturgical. The way he stood on the balcony evoked old portraits of pontiffs who marked history with courage and doctrine. It was as if tradition itself, capital T, had taken form before the multitude. And with it, the splendor of unchanging faith shone anew. The cassock, white as the consecrated host, seemed to reflect the setting sun, flooding the square with an almost sacramental light. Here, white was not absence of color, but fullness, the pure presence of grace, of light that knows no shadow. Wrapped in that garment, the Pope became almost an icon, a presence pointing to an invisible reality, and the people, silent, understood without words. The scene's beauty was not theatrical, but theological. Like Eastern icons, every visible element led the gaze beyond itself, toward eternity. The Church, which loves the visible signs of grace, found here a mirror of herself. And the world, so starved for transcendence, felt itself touched by the sacred. The faithful in the front rows, many with tears in their eyes, were not beholding a political figure. Before them stood the spiritual father of Christendom who, even without speaking, already pronounced eternal truths. His vesture wrapped them like a visible blessing, an embrace from heaven. It was the liturgy of presence, of the mystery made flesh. Behind this aesthetic choice lay a profound spirit of prayer. Leo XIV did not choose his vesture as one chooses any outfit, but as one who clothes himself with a character. Each piece was the fruit of meditation, of spiritual discernment. For him, to govern is to serve, and to serve requires signs. The Pope understands that sacred signs speak powerfully in a world deaf to the word. Therefore he resumes vesture that catechizes, teaches, attracts, not out of vanity but pastoral zeal. For that which is beautiful and true leads to the eternal good. By opting for the mozzetta with ermine, Leo XIV invokes times when popes were considered teachers and martyrs. There is no room for neutrality regarding the truth. The white ermine upon the shoulders is like the lamb upon the good shepherd's shoulders. It is also a sign of vigilance, care, defense of the faith. The golden stole, often forgotten or minimized in public appearances, once again takes center stage. It is the living reminder that the Pope is above all a priest, and that priesthood is service, but also authority received from Christ. Its placement upon the shoulders is like holy oil that consecrates. Many priests, seeing this image of the Pope with the stole, felt reaffirmed in their identity. What the Pope lives and shows resonates in the entire priestly body. It is a silent confirmation that the ordained ministry remains alive and necessary, a catechesis on priesthood, transmitted in gold and fabric. The fisherman's ring, so often hidden from view, was displayed with reverence, almost with solemnity. The Pope raised it briefly in a gesture of blessing, and the world saw the Church is still on mission. Peter's bark still sails, even amid storms, and the helmsman is steady at the helm. There is profound symbolism in the union of the ring with the other vestments. The ring seals the Pope's commitment to mission, the stole to priesthood, the cross to sacrifice, three vertices of one triangle: authority, service, oblation, three faces of the same self-gift to God's people. The pectoral cross, resting on the Pope's chest, becomes the visual and spiritual center of the image. It is not an accessory, but an essence. There, over the heart, is the heart of Christ. And the Pope, a man among men, presents himself as an echo of that heart. In times of relativism, the Pope's cross recalls that there is a single truth that passes through pain. There is no resurrection without the cross, nor church without sacrifice. The gold that surrounds the cross does not hide its weight but exalts it, for the church glories in the cross's glory. The red shoes gleaming on the balcony's marble marked a turning point. Like a sacred ruby, they shone under the Roman evening light, and many realized that with them the blood of the martyrs was proclaimed anew. It was as if the Pope's steps trod the very soil of the Church's history. The red of these shoes united two meanings: divine love and human martyrdom. They signaled that the Pope walks with Christ's feet, feet that did not flee the cross but embraced it, feet that washed others, that walked with the poor, that bled for the flock. The balcony scene quickly became an image of devotion. Postcards, portraits, banners, all fixed that moment as an icon, for it condensed something greater than the occasion. It revealed the Church's visible soul. Many young people who perhaps had never seen such vesture were touched by its beauty and depth. Countless testimonies speak of conversions, awakened vocations, inexplicable tears. The image evangelized because it was true, and truth, shown in beauty, always convinces. The Pope knew that, in that instant, every gaze mattered. He knew communication was not only verbal, but sacramental. Therefore he prepared every piece with awe and reverence, for he represented not himself, but the Church, the bride of Christ. The entire Vatican seemed to hush when he appeared, as if time had rolled back, as if John Paul II, Benedict XV, and Pius V were mystically present. It was a moment of communion across times, between saints and the living. The Church, one, holy and Catholic, became visible in that vesture. The impact of that first appearance generated a wave of reverence. Bishops and cardinals called the Pope's decision prophetic. Many understood it was not nostalgia, but a prophetic sign, a gaze turned upward toward the eternal. It was not a return to the past, but an opening to the sacred. Leo XIV showed that tradition is not a prison but freedom. Freedom to be faithful, to be authentic, to be truly Catholic, and to allow signs to lead to the realities they signify. The square, once noisy with murmurs and comments, fell silent before the sacred. Thousands of cell phones were lowered at the same time in an almost liturgical gesture. All wished to see, but also to contemplate, for they knew something greater than man had manifested itself. On the balcony, Leo XIV was not alone. With him were the martyrs, the saints, the doctors of the Church. His vesture spoke in their name, and his presence said to the world, "The Church still stands." Unveil. Thus, between the gold of light and the red of martyrdom, a pontificate was born, firm, faithful, solemn, bearing the glorious weight of the cross, the discreet fragrance of tradition, and the serene face of a Father who blesses. The bells of St. Peter's rang long, as if in chorus with the vestments. The bronze of the towers responded to the gold of the stole, the white of the cassock, the red of the shoes. It was the whole Church in all her senses announcing the new shepherd, and with him the unshakable fidelity of God.